This is Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur with your host, Lynn Freest. Lynn will share ideas and expert advice from people that are walking in your shoes and living their encore careers, where they want and at the pace they want. You'll start a company of one with confidence and knowledge to live a fulfilled life of freedom and ease. Lynn is a coach and leadership consultant whose mission is to show senior leaders and experts how to start something refreshing and new after a full career in the corporate environment.
Welcome to this episode of Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur. Thanks for listening. With an encore career, the rewards are better than a cold beer on a hot day. And you can be creating value in the world beyond just winning the next pickleball game. You can work when you want, where you want, and you can do the work you love. Also, on October 27th of 2022, I begin by hosting an Encore Career Book Club. And it helps 50-plus-year-olds that are new to entrepreneurship, and that could be you, how to practically apply lessons from the book You Are the Brand by best-selling author Mike Kim. So, if you're ready to get started today, please contact me at lynn@lynnfreest.com. Thanks. This is episode 167, and it's my takeaways from an epic Mastermind conference. So the things we'll talk about today are: what was the conference? The 4 areas of topics that I saw. And then what were the mindset topics? What were the skill set topics? And then some final takeaways. And because of the richness of this conference, in upcoming episodes, I'll interview some of these amazing people and also dive more into depth on some of the subjects. So what was the conference? It was hosted by Mike Kim, a good friend and teacher. He's best-selling author of the book You Are the Brand. It lasted over 3 days, and it included several of Mike's mastermind groups, including the one that I'm in. And it had over 50-plus people at it, so it was a rich but not overwhelming group of people. Now, there were 4 topic areas that I identified of all the marvelous speakers he had. The first topic area was mindset. The second was skill set. The third was success stories. And finally, each of the speakers shared their personal stories, and that's always very powerful to me also. So what were the mindset topics? First one, Sean Osborne, he talked about the operating system of you. Sean had worked in tech. He came from a very challenging background, but he had gotten out there and said, okay, how do I change the circumstances? How do I change myself, the whole idea of how do I change my mindset, and then how do I move forward? So he had a great talk on thinking of yourself as an operating system and how do you upgrade that. And another one was by Matt Clark. Matt comes from a background in NASCAR, where he developed high-performing teams for pit crews and other arenas, and he now does that further. But Matt's taken a deeper dive into what's the neuroscience behind change and creating high-performing teams. So he really gave us a rich explanation of some of his research into how do you create high performance. The next one was Dr. Ellen Wong, and she had an amazing conversation around the art and science of happiness. And she's publishing some really interesting stuff on what are the facets that help you develop happiness, what is it, and how is it different than maybe we've thought about it in the past. Then we had Teresa McCoy, and she has what's called the real life process. And one of the key things I got out of that was what you schedule actually reflects your priorities. So it's one of those things where she says, if you have a priority around family, you have a priority around growth, let's look at your schedule. Is that really in there? And she had much more to say around that, but it was, I thought, a rich conversation about, okay, what's on your schedule is who you are. So let's pay attention to that. And then finally, he didn't actually present at the conference, but I've heard a presentation and had a lot of conversation with him, is Dr. Eugene Choi. And he talks again about neuroscience. How does the mind work? What's actually going on? What do we know in today's world about how you change, how you improve, how you grow? just really interesting stuff that I happened to get around that whole idea of mindset. And for me, mindset is one of the key elements of any encore career, because we're shifting from our corporate mindset into the entrepreneurial mindset. And it's a challenge. So I really got a lot out of each of these speakers because it's such a critical topic for what we want to do. But then after the mindset issues, we get into the skill sets. And here, again, there were marvelous speakers. First one I led off the conference was actually Linda Fogg Phillips, and she talked about the small changes that change everything. She's leader of the Tiny Habits organization. Her brother, BJ Fogg, wrote the book, Tiny Habits. So again, it's a very rich conversation of, okay, how do you actually change things by changing tiny steps in what you do each and every day? The next speaker was Stacy Randall, and she talks about generating referrals without asking. And she flips the whole idea of how you get referrals on its head, and was, again, marvelous conversation. And I hope to have her on the podcast sometime soon, because it's a really interesting message that she has on how do you get referrals. And at personal brand businesses, entrepreneurs, it's a key piece that we often are puzzled by and don't know how to do. She gives us some clarity around that. Then we had a pair, Robert and Kaylee Fuku, and they talked about their book Tandem. And they explore the idea of how do couples work as entrepreneurs. And it could be one of the people is the primary entrepreneur, but you have to have both of you on board. So they have a rich conversation. And again, I hope to interview them, because I think having you and your significant other, your spouse, whoever it may be, you need to have everybody on board as you move forward in your entrepreneurial journey. Then we had Jason Frizzell, and he talked about coaching. He's a coach in the tech arena, does marvelous work, a lot of energy, and he just gave us a lot of interest, especially in personal brand businesses. We tend to have coaching elements of that, if not our primary activity. So he had great insights. And again, I hope to have him as a guest on the podcast in the future. Then we had a panel made up of Ryan Corral, Cameron King, and Lauren Davis. And this was video marketing for coaches. And it was fascinating too. Hey, here's the ways to get started in video marketing. Often, at least for me, it's not a natural thing to do. But they talked about what are the key things that really helped you trigger your video marketing. Following that, Danny Osmond, who is producer of this podcast and a friend, he said how to get booked on podcasts. Because even if you don't have your own podcast and growing your business, it can be very useful to be part of other podcasts. So he had a lot of interesting strategies about how you promote, how you share what you know so that it's useful to other podcasters to have you on as a guest. And then finally was a panel on optimizing your SEO. And it was with Robbie Fowler and Nick Young. And each of them had really interesting technical tips about what to pay attention to. Again, this is a new arena. It may not be something that you spend all your time on as an entrepreneur and developing your encore career. But this might be arenas where you get the, hey, here's what it is, here's how it works, and then I'm going to have somebody else help optimize my material for SEO and things like that. But it was very enlightening to hear what they said. And then finally, it was an interesting one. It was a short presentation by Julia Trondidley. And she had a TikTok video that went viral and had millions of views. And it was a simple thing as, here's how you make a crab rangoon. Again, this may not apply to all of us, or we don't think it applies, but just the whole concept of, she took what was maybe, a 10-minute video and then made it shorter into it, but it ended up being like a 17-second video that millions of people looked at. So again, not an obvious thing that we might do, but just recognizing that some of that's out there. It can be interesting, but whatever you have to say, think about how you could say it in a shorter chunk of time that might be useful on some of the social media. Just an interesting one. So some final takeaways, and understand, again, this is just I'm only a week away from the middle of the conference, so I'm still processing it. But a couple things are just occurring to me now. And like I said, I'm going to come back and recover these things and talk with people more in depth. But the design of the conference was marvelous. There were literally a lot of open space and time that normally we only went until early afternoon with speakers, and even in between the speakers, there was 20 minutes between each speaker. So people had a chance to connect and talk with each other. The venue was interesting because it was a combination innovation conference center, but it had a lot of open space, different rooms, different office type areas, but it allowed you to have private conversations. Even some people did some podcasting. There were people who did some video work in there, and you could just meet informally on sofas that were around the place. That whole idea of one, and I mentioned earlier, it was a smaller conference. It wasn't easy to meet all 50, 60 people, but you could meet them all, and you got to have time to have conversations with all of them. And always, when I've done conferences in my whole life, much of the value comes between the speakers, between or before or after the conference or whatever it may be. The design of this with speakers, short speakers during the day, and then about 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it was over. And then from that time until they closed in the evening at 6 p.m., you could meet in the space, you could talk with different people, you can even have a series of conversations. Again, it allowed for a lot of processing time, a lot of innovative thinking, a lot of time to talk with, like I said, 50 or 60 other really amazing people. So it was the whole structure of it, I think, really improved my value. And I think the value everybody else got out of it. And again, some follow-up things that, this power of masterminds or peer groups. And I believe Napoleon Hill popularized the term mastermind, but Ben Franklin had the same thing, and others have done that over time. Have the opportunity to have like-minded, smart people get together and talk through what it is they're up to. And this power of talking. It's easy to hear something, you think about it for a while, you process it, but this idea of talking to other people about it, I think, is really powerful and makes a real difference. And then the opportunity to see how others are developing their businesses. Again, they may have a very different business, maybe TikTok videos, or it may be something else, how to generate referrals. But again, the steps that you see other people taking can help inform your own. And I think that's great. Also, it's fun that you find out that no one has it all figured out. So some of these people that I thought, and they truly were exceptional in what they were doing, but they would say, okay, I don't know, this aspect of my business, I'm not doing very well. So we had some people who have very significant business say, I don't do very good on an email list. I really need to spend some time developing that. Or several of the people said, I've done a little video, but that's not one of the things I do great, but I need to do better. And then the final thing is, I would say all these people, the speakers, the people I've met, they have a bigger purpose. So it's just not about I'm trying to do something interesting and make money. It's also I have a purpose to help people. I want others to share in what I know. I want others to become happier. I want others to find it easier to get referrals. Any number of things. All these people had a bigger purpose in mind. And that, again, for me was heartening. It made me think, yeah, this is all worthwhile. So just to recap here, I explained what the conference was, the 4 topic areas that I saw, and then we went into a little more depth on some mindset topics and some skill set topics. With that, again, I encourage you to listen to future upcoming episodes where I'll hit these people in more depth, either talk to them in person or explore what they were talking about on a solo episode. So to kind of wrap up here, with an encore career, the rewards are great. You can be creating value in the world beyond just winning the next pickleball game. You can work when you want, where you want, and do the work you love. So if you're ready to get started, please contact me at lynn@lynnfrias.com or head to lynnfrias.com, listen to a few podcasts, and get on the email list. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.